guys, what is going on? It is Filter SD here, and I'm back for episode number 12 of my Terran Bronze Master series for Heart of the Swarm. In this particular episode, we're going to be taking a look at what I like to call taking the damage and just being used to it and recovering from it. This is a pretty big deal when you're talking about specifically taking damage when you're doing a bit of a greedy build and being able to come back and win. So I've got a couple of replays that I want to go through. And just kind of show you like the important things to do when you're taking damage, how to kind of recover from it, and how to understand when it's you're taking damage because your build order is greedy, but that's going to be okay. You're still going to have the opportunity to come back and win the game. It's a really important concept when you're doing a lot of these heavy upgrade builds that a lot of people don't quite understand or sometimes miss, that you can afford to take damage. A lot of cases your opponent has to straight out kill you to win the game. In a lot of situations your opponent, if he makes a mistake or whatever, that's where you're going to be able to take advantage of this. So in this particular game, it is a Masters Terran versus another Masters Terran. We'll take a look at this. This game is one of the more extreme examples of this, but my opponent definitely makes mistakes where he could have won the game. But it's fairly simple and straightforward. Now, the idea behind kind of playing like this is that in some situations you are going to take damage if your opponent makes certain timing attacks. Now, the thing about his attacks are they're going to have to kill you. So things like Cloak Banshee openers, early siege tank pressure, that kind of stuff, by and large has to kill you, or you're going to end up like really far ahead in terms of upgrades, and that's what's going to give you the advantage to really take the game home and win it. Now, a lot of people ask me about the 50 SCVs and like why is it so important. I only get like 43, 44. Games like this are where having really good SCV production is probably the biggest deal. So in this particular game, you can see I'm going to open up with the Reaper. We'll just follow this guy all the way over. You notice the timing of my Reaper is quite good. If I had better micro, I could actually win the game right now, but I don't. So, because his build's fairly greedy. But what I should have been able to do is kill off his Marines fast enough. You can see I basically lose my Reapers. I do eventually kill them off, or kill off his Marines. But if I had done a better job, I, would have been able to pretty much end the game here with better micro. So this opening had a pretty major flaw in it, and these fast tech openings you can take advantage of if you're going for like a little bit of early Reaper play. Now you can see in the background my base is getting fully set up, right? Like I've got 2 engineering bays, I've got my command center up, I've got all my barracks ready to go, I'm getting stim. I am using 2 barracks naked because I know I need units. And here comes my opponent's Cloak Banshee, which is going to do more damage than it probably should, mostly because I'm bad. But we'll just go through and you can see Banshee's going around, cutting everything down. Not too much of a big deal. His other Banshee's down here. Again, he's getting more and more kills, and this shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen, but it does. So, throw up the production tab and you can kind of see what's going on. Now, before my opponent makes his attack, now his attack's not all in, but I'm running a very thin defense, right? Like I'm relying heavily on Marines. Now, I do scout this coming. Right, I throw out a Marine just to check to see what he's up to. You can see I've got another Marine going down to check his other base, or potential location for another base. But on my opponent's side of the map, what you see is a factory, 4 barracks. He doesn't have stim or combat shield. That's ridiculous. But he's spending most of his gas on things like medevacs, siege tanks, Cloak Banshee. He is getting a 3rd base, but there's no armories anywhere to be found. He's not getting upgrades. You can see I've already finished 1-1. As soon as my armory finishes, I'm going to be able to start getting 2-2. Now the disadvantage is that my army consists of basically just Marines, right? So this kind of push, where he has like 2 tanks or 3 tanks and a Banshee and a medevac and some Hellions, is actually going to be quite difficult for me. But if I do manage to hold it, I'm going to be like digging into 2-2 upgrades. As you can see, 2-2 started. He hasn't even started 1-1. So I try to meet him out because I want to slow his tank push down. I try to meet him out. Unfortunately, I don't kill that tank. And you're going to see his Banshee RS has already killed 11 workers, right? Here's the catch. He's killed 11 of my workers. I have a 9 SCV lead right now. And the reason for that is I've just been consistently making SCVs, right? That's all I've been doing. Consistently making SCVs, getting my upgrades, and this is actually going to get a lot worse because I have to try to break him with SCVs. Doesn't work. He's still only up by 6 SCVs despite killing 24 of mine, right? You can see my opponent is focusing heavily on the battle and not macroing behind it. Obviously, if this guy was a better player, like a GM or something, or a High Master player, he would he would finish me off. But the flip side of that is I wouldn't have taken that much damage from Banshee Rasp if I was a better player, right? So I pick up because I don't have a scan, and then when I get a scan, that's when I drop out of my medevacs, just to try to take less damage, right? But now from this point of the game, I'm able to take a third base. He's taking a third as well. You can see he's now got a 20 SCB lead, and I've taken a ton of damage, right? But if we evaluate the game on its current state, yes, my opponent definitely does have a lead, but there's a couple things that are going to give me a pretty major advantage. I'm starting 3-3 upgrades. On my opponent's side of things, he doesn't even have 1-1, and he's not doing it, right? Like, he's only just now getting stim for his bio, right? He's got combat shield. Like, he put a lot of his gas into that attack, into the Banshee harass, into getting units, and simply has not put it into upgrades, which is where I'm going to get a huge advantage. So in this current state of the game, with that big of an upgrade lead, I have an insane advantage. My opponent actually should be defending, not attacking. And I'm going to show you why. Right? So I notice him come out for the attack, and I go to flank him. This medevac thing's, is what it is, but basically I just charge. Don't let that happen. But I charge him, and I try to hit him from two flanks with kind of my reinforcements on the backside and my main army here. But because I have such a large upgrade advantage, what looks like it should be a fight heavily in his favor goes heavily in my favor, just because of the upgrades, right? So again, pull back and heal. And now I'm going to have my reinforcements, right? He stims in. It's not going to do anything. My reinforcements will clean that up. And again, my guys come in, mop up his tanks. All of a sudden, the lead ends up being pretty heavily in my favor. And you can see throughout this, continuing to make SCVs, right? Trying to get myself back in the game. And we're going to push through and win the game, right? That's not a game I should have won. My opponent should have won that easily, but because I was prepared to take damage, because I knew I had a big upgrade lead, because I was scouting that out on my opponent, that's where I was able to win the game. And it's really important you get used to that idea. I lost 35 SCVs in this game to the 3 of his that I killed, and I still won the game relatively easily, right? It's really important you get used to this idea that sometimes you are going to take damage, but if you are getting upgrades, you are like repairing your economy, so you're getting enough SCVs to kind of be palatable and be able to handle his attack, then you're going to be in good shape, right? So if we scroll back to right when I lost all those workers, set you a little bit before, there we go. Keep in mind I've already lost a bunch from the Banshee harass. Alright, so that's when I lose workers. Keep in mind the first 14 minutes of the game I have had an economic lead, right? And at this stage he only has a 6 worker lead on me. That's it. Despite me losing 24 workers, and I actually lose a bunch more later on. But at this stage of the game, he only has a 6 SCV lead on me, and this is why it's so important to consistently make workers all the time, and kind of get that big worker count up, so that when you do go to take your third, you're saturated and all that kind of fun stuff. But you can imagine, I have 38 workers now, which actually gives me 16 SCVs here, I've got 17 here, and I've got 13 here, but I could have proper saturation still, so my economy would not be negatively affected basically in any way, shape, or form by his attack. And that's a pretty huge deal, because that's going to allow me to kind of stay in the game, right? And when you're playing your own games, you have to remember, if you made less workers than I did, let's say you missed 15 SCVs, instead of having 38, you're only going to have 23. That's a huge difference, and you would have lost the game for sure. So it's really important that even when you're taking damage and you're getting attacked, that you're constantly creating workers. That's what's going to let you win these games when you feel like you're in really, really rough shape and you should be out of it, right? As long as you're getting your SCVs out and you're constantly producing workers, you're going to be in really good shape. So this is the next one. Now this one's a little bit more of a less extreme example. I didn't mean to watch with others, but whatever. Well, this will work. This is a little bit of a less extreme example, but it's still a really good example of how to take damage, and it can happen against any race. But if you're staying on top of your worker production, you're going to be in good shape. And Terrans, because they get mules and stuff, a lot of Masters level Terrans are just not that good at having really good worker production. Because you can get away by being like a really aggressive, really good drop-based Terran, and having kind of questionable mechanics behind it at a Masters level. You know, once you get to High Masters, that's where those guys are going to really have trouble, right? Like, I'm not a very good drop Terran, I'm not a very good aggressive Terran, but I am usually a pretty good macro Terran. So you can see in this situation, I'm expanding to 3 command centers. My opponent's going for a little bit faster tech than I am. but it's not going to be too big of a deal, right? So you can see, like, there's some patches where I'm missing SCBs, like there's a supply block, lots of bad things, but at the same time, I'm in general, I'm doing pretty good. So here he comes for his first drop, right? This is actually going to get a reactor and do a little bit of damage, but if we take a look at the worker lead, I'm up 14 workers. Now, because I went for fast 3cc, I've actually missed about 15 SCVs. My opponent's missed way more than that. You can see he's not even making SCVs in the background. He's got no rally point. His base is a mess. You know, he's got 2 engineering bays, but he's not doing anything with them type deal. Whereas I'm almost finished 1-1. Like, there's lots of problems in the background. Now, I have to pull SCVs to hold this off, because I wasn't ready, my macro's a little bit behind. But you can see he's killed 12 SCVs, and I have an 8 SCV lead. Right, and it's not just the double command center thing that's giving me that lead, although that is a big part of it, like a little bit of a build order advantage here. Now, again, we look through, I've got a 15 SCV lead again, I've got a nice big jump. My opponent's going for a bit of a doom drop, which unfortunately, because I had poor map control, I do not see coming. Now he loses a full medevac here, and he's going to get some damage done. Right, so very slow SCV pull. In fact, I didn't pull them at all. And now I'm sitting here and I'm like, with the 2 medevacs there, and I don't think I have stim just finished, I cannot go into this army and attack it, because we're both on 1-1, right? Like, he started as 1-1, he's got his armory down, but he isn't starting 2-2, which is, again, a mistake on his part. But I can't take that army, so I'm not going to just throw my Marines away and waste them, because if I do that, I'm going to lose the game for sure. What I have to do is kind of let him pick off structures in the back, let him do a little bit of damage. When my medevacs get here is when I start to get a little more aggressive at trying to take him out. Right? And again, just waiting. There we go. Finally, I get his army cleaned up, and at the same time, I landed my own drop back here. And I'll show you what that did in just a second. But if we take a look at the state of the game, where we're at, again, 31 SCVs have died on my end through like poor play and miss micro on my part, but purely out of being good at continuously making workers, I have a 1 worker lead. And my third goes up before his does. Right? And he's a master's level Terran. Again, this is just, you know, being better than my opponent at making SCVs, and being better at getting upgrades. Those are the only things I'm doing better than my opponent in this game. That's it. He's controlling better, he's dropping better, he's making, you know, better decisions than I am, his map control's a lot better. A ton of things that my opponent is doing better than me, but because I'm better at making workers, that's why I'm winning the game. So we're just going to pull it back a couple of minutes here, and we're going to take a look at my drop. Right? So here comes my drop, which is happening at the same time. Part of the reason I couldn't really defend this attack properly is because I'm dropping too. He's got no missile turrets. I come into his base, he's already pulled his SCVs. Near perfect reaction time, right? If those SCVs were there, I would have gunned them all down. But they're not. So now I have to prioritize. What am I going to do? Well, I'm probably not going to kill the command center. He's going to be able to reinforce and kill my army before I can gun that down, right? Because it'll float over. There could be siege tanks here. I don't know this. So command center is out of the question. The reactor on the starport, that would have been a good thing to kill. Unfortunately, I decided not to kill it. Other things are supply depots, but what I do is I look and I go, okay, he's not upgrading 2-2. He has an armory, but he hasn't started 2-2. If I kill his armory, I'm going to have a huge upgrade advantage. So I gun down his armory, and I barely get it. At the cost of all my Marines, my medevacs, I get the armory though, and he has not started 2-2, whereas I have. And that decision is going to give me a huge advantage. You can see lazy idle SCVs. But again, my third's up first. I'm not making SCVs out of it, which is unfortunate. But you can see I still have an SCV lead. There we go. I know these stay idle for a while. Alright, so again, I have an 8 worker lead after losing 31 SCVs, and then when I get 2-2, that's when I look to move out on the map and really take some aggression back on my opponent, right? Now, I don't know that I'm this far ahead. The only thing I don't even think I've scouted is his third base properly. That being said, I feel pretty comfortable with the fact that I'm going to have an upgrade lead, that I can probably be a little bit aggressive going out on the map, right? So, we'll just speed it up. And my opponent makes a critical mistake. This is really his only army movement mistake of the entire game. So he scanned this, he knows about my third base, he knows he doesn't have a third base, so he really has to go and do serious damage or possibly even win the game with this attack. In my opponent's situation, because he's done so much damage, he probably feels like he's in the lead. And that's why you have to be really careful when you are doing a lot of damage to drops and stuff like that, that you don't underestimate your opponent. Right? Because he's behind. He's straight up behind despite doing way more damage to me than I've done to him. Now my opponent does not take this watchtower first. If he took this watchtower first, he has the opportunity to siege his tanks up back here, and I probably can't engage him. But in this situation, he makes a critical mistake. Right? This is the only army movement mistake my opponent makes all game, and this is what's going to cost him the game. Right? Just by me getting the watchtower when I moved out, that's one of the only good things I've done all game. And then I don't overextend, right? I don't know, like I scan up, but I don't know if there's more tanks back here. I don't know what his base looks like for defense. And I'm on 3 base. I know if I kill this, and I've actually scouted down here, so I know he doesn't have a third. Or I think I actually walked down to kill it. Yeah, so I walked down to kill it because I don't need to try to push up and risk losing the game. So I come back as he tries to take his natural, and now I can break him. And you see my opponent just types in WoW because he's probably a little bit pissed off that he lost to that particular kind of tactic, right? But you can see, I get all the way up to 60 SCVs. I've made 91 this game because I've lost so many. And I have really good 3-base saturation, and I'm going to be able to take a 4th base really, really quickly. Regardless of if this attack killed him or not, right? I get myself back in a winning position. And the way I do that is when I'm taking damage, I'm focused on making sure my tech is still going up. Doesn't matter if I'm playing Zerg, Protoss, or Terran. My tech, so my upgrades, my starport, stim combat shield, my extra production, I make sure all of that is still happening and still going up, regardless of the fact that I'm taking damage, right? There's some situations where you're not going to be able to do that, but 99% of the time, that's how you're going to break out of a Protoss that is foregating you. That's how you break out of a Zerg that's containing you. You get your tech up so that you can go push them out of your base. Right? You can go push out the contain. In the case of a Terran, if you get that upgrade lead on your Marines, and you're able to take advantage of it, so like my opponent is just starting 2-2. 2-2-1-1 is one of the biggest upgrade advantages you can have in a Terran versus Terran. So I'm going to have, I've had that advantage for a very long time in this game, and I'm still going to have that advantage for another 2 minutes in game time if the game were to go longer. And even then, I'm still going to have 3-3 for another 4 minutes in the game. It makes a huge difference. So it's really important that when you're playing, when you're taking damage, make sure you're making workers. Don't go, I'm getting attacked, and go, I need more military units. Well, you do, but you should be able to still produce all your military units and get your SCVs. And it's really important that you are getting those SCVs. Because that's what's going to help you stabilize and recover after the fact. When you watch a professional level game, you watch somebody like Flash play, and he'll take a ton of damage, but he'll still have a worker lead. Right? When he's playing somebody who's not quite on his level, because he is so good, and that's kind of what you want to focus on. So it's really important that you are capable of taking damage, losing a million workers to drops and harass and attacks and all that stuff, and being able to still go out and win the game. Right? So these are 2 replays that kind of demonstrate that. Both of them are a little bit extreme, and of course I want to mention that in both cases, if my opponent had have played perfectly, he would have beat me really, really easily. That being said, I'm a mid-masters player. The other 2 gentlemen I was playing against were both mid-masters level players. This series is bronze to master. It's all about getting you to master, and these are some skills that are going to be really, really, really important all the way through your whole time playing StarCraft 2. It's important that you understand you can take damage if your opponent is not, teching up, or he's maybe missing some of his own workers, and you're going to be just fine. Some other examples of this are when your opponent is a Protoss player and he makes a lot of Stalkers, his tech is generally behind. Even though the Stalkers are really good early game units, they drop off significantly as upgrades come into the game, right? And they really put a Protoss player's tech behind. So if a Protoss attacks you with, a lot of Stalkers really early and he kills off 10 or 15 SCVs, but you're getting your upgrades and all your tech, you're actually going to be in a really, really good place. When my opponents go for a lot of Blink Stalkers against me, which happens very rarely, but sometimes it does, I'm really comfortable in that game and I feel like I can win it very, very easily. Same thing applies to Zerg. When Zerg puts on a lot of pressure with roaches, and he does a 2-base roach timing off 30, 35 drones or something, you can actually afford to lose all your SCVs except for 15 or 20 of them if you are teching up behind it, and you've done a 3cc opener and your opponent's only done a 2-base roach attack. There's all kinds of situations where you can take a lot of damage and still be ahead and still come out and win the game. Just because your opponent is using units that cost a lot of gas and kind of delays later game tech. Another good example is tanks, like a 1 or 2 base tank play, where he has like a lot, like 4 or 5 siege tanks or more. That's a situation where as long as you don't die to it, which easier said than done, you're going to end up being ahead after the fact if you are getting upgrades on your infantry. Do you want for a biotank style or just a straight up bio style? That's where you're going to be able to take advantage of them and have a lead. So it's really important you know and understand that. Anyway guys, this is Filter SC, and I will see you guys next time. Hopefully you enjoyed this particular video, and it was just a little bit of a lighter look at how important it is to take damage, how important it is to be able to recover from that damage, and how you're going to go about doing that, which is quite simply continuing to make SCVs and continuing with your tech.